Welcome to the Discourse Analyzer AI Toolkit, where articles come alive. You're listening to the audio version of our article. For the full text and an interactive experience, check out the link in the description below. Interact with any selection using our AI assistant to enhance your understanding. Let's explore.
Tools for conducting Foucauldian Discourse Analysis. Foucauldian Discourse Analysis employs a robust set of tools that delve into the intricate mechanisms by which power, knowledge, and subjectivity are constructed and exercised within societies. These tools, ranging from identifying epistemes, examining discursive practices, and analyzing power relations to more specialized approaches like genealogy, archaeology of knowledge, biopolitics, governmentality, technologies of the self, and subjectification, offer diverse perspectives for exploring the depths of social structures and individual behaviors. By utilizing these methods, scholars and researchers can uncover the subtle and often invisible forces that shape human experience and societal norms. This discussion will outline and explore these tools, demonstrating their relevance and application in conducting Foucauldian discourse analysis. 1. Identifying epistemes. Conducting a Foucauldian analysis, particularly in identifying epistemes, the underlying conditions of truth and knowledge characteristic of different historical periods, requires a set of conceptual and methodological tools that adhere to Foucault's philosophical commitments. This analysis is integral for understanding how discourses are formed, how they function, and how they are governed by broader cultural and intellectual currents of their time. Let's explore some tools and approaches that can aid in identifying and analyzing epistemes as per Foucault's framework. 1. Tools for identifying epistemes. Historical analysis. Extensive reading. Delve into a broad array of texts from a particular period, including not just philosophical or scientific works but also literature, legal documents, medical treatises, and religious texts. Contextual mapping. Place these texts within their broader socio-historical context to see how they respond to or reflect the cultural and intellectual environment. Comparative analysis. Cross-epistemic comparison. Compare how different periods treat similar concepts or problems, looking for shifts in understanding or approach that might signal a change in epistemic underpinnings. Synchronic and diachronic analysis. Analyze texts and ideas both from within a single period, synchronic, and across different periods, diachronic, to trace the evolution or discontinuity of thought. Discourse analysis. Structural analysis of discourse. Examine the structures of language and argumentation in texts to uncover the rules and conventions that govern what is sayable and knowable in a given period. Thematic analysis. Identify recurring themes and concepts across a range of texts to discern underlying assumptions and values. Archaeological method. Rule extraction. Identify the rules of formation for discourses as described by Foucault, which dictate what can be said, by whom, and under what conditions. Description of discursive formations. Systematically describe the network of relations among discursive elements, statements, themes, concepts, without trying to interpret or evaluate them. Genealogical approach. Trace of origins. While primarily concerned with power relations and their historical roots, genealogy can also reveal shifts in epistemes by showing how certain truths became established and what interests they served. Analysis of power, knowledge. Look at how knowledge systems are linked to power structures, influencing what is considered true or authoritative. 2. Practical steps for conducting Foucauldian analysis. Selection of sources. Choose a diverse range of texts and artifacts from the period under study to ensure a comprehensive view of the prevailing discourses. Documentation and archiving. Maintain meticulous records of all sources, noting where they converge or diverge in terms of ideas, vocabulary, and presupposed truths. Interdisciplinary engagement. Collaborate across disciplines to gain different perspectives on the material, enriching the analysis and aiding in the recognition of epistemic structures. Regular reflection. Continuously reflect on one's own presuppositions and biases as a researcher to avoid imposing contemporary understandings on historical data. Identifying epistemes using Foucauldian analysis requires a deep engagement with both the content and context of historical discourses. By employing a range of analytical tools and maintaining a critical stance, researchers can uncover the underlying conditions that define what is considered truth in different periods. This analysis not only enriches our understanding of intellectual history but also illuminates the ways in which our current truths are shaped by specific historical and discursive conditions. 2. Examining discursive practices. Examining discursive practices within a Foucauldian framework involves a deep analysis of how discourses are produced, the rules that govern them, and the roles they play within society. Foucault's emphasis on discourse as a vehicle for power and knowledge makes this examination particularly critical for understanding the dynamics of societal control and individual identity formation. Here are some essential tools and methodologies to conduct this type of analysis effectively. 1. Tools for examining discursive practices. Discourse analysis. Linguistic analysis. Study the language used in various texts to uncover the typical patterns, terminologies, and structures that signify underlying power relations. Narrative structure. Investigate the way stories are told within discourses, identifying who is allowed to speak, what subjects are legitimized, and what information is highlighted or obscured. Contextual analysis. Historical context. Situate discourses within their specific historical and cultural contexts to understand how they reflect and influence societal norms and values at the time. Institutional context. Analyze the role of institutions in shaping discourses, looking at how schools, media, religious institutions, and other entities enforce and propagate certain discursive practices. Theoretical tools. Archaeological and genealogical methods. Utilize Foucault's methodologies to trace the formation and transformation of discourses over time, focusing on the conditions under which they arise and the effects they produce. Conceptual analysis. Use Foucauldian concepts such as power, knowledge, biopower, and governmentality to frame and interpret the findings of the discourse analysis. Interdisciplinary approach. Integration of different disciplines. Draw on insights from sociology, psychology, history, and other fields to provide a richer, more nuanced analysis of discourses and their impacts on various aspects of life. Comparative studies. Compare and contrast discourses across different societies or historical periods to highlight unique features and common patterns. 2. Methodological steps for analyzing discursive practices. Data collection. Diverse sources. Gather a wide array of texts, media, and other discourse artifacts. This can include public records, media broadcasts, academic journals, and popular literature. Documenting practices. Record the practices surrounding the production and reception of discourses, such as publication processes, public policies, educational curricula, and media distribution practices. Analytical framework. Coding and categorization. Systematically code data to identify recurring themes, phrases, and discourse strategies. Categorize these findings to track patterns and anomalies. Critical engagement. Engage critically with the data, questioning the assumptions and power structures that underlie discursive practices. Synthesis and interpretation. Interpretive analysis. Synthesize findings to construct an interpretive framework that explains how discourses function within society, the roles they play, and the impacts they have. Foucauldian lenses. Apply Foucauldian theories and concepts to deepen the interpretation and link micro-level findings to broader societal structures. Documentation and reporting. Comprehensive reporting. Prepare detailed reports that not only present the findings but also discuss their implications for understanding power dynamics and societal structures. Critical reflection. Reflect on the research process itself, noting any biases or limitations and considering how they might affect the interpretation of the data. Examining discursive practices through a Foucauldian lens involves a multifaceted approach that requires meticulous analysis, critical thinking, and an understanding of the complex interplay between language, power, and society. By employing these tools and methodologies, researchers can uncover the subtle and overt ways discourses shape and are shaped by social forces, contributing to a deeper understanding of societal mechanisms and individual behaviors. 3. Power relations analysis. Analyzing power relations through a Foucauldian lens involves investigating how relationships of power are constructed, maintained, and exercised through discourse. Michel Foucault's insights into power as both a pervasive and constitutive force in society provide a robust framework for exploring the intricate ways in which power influences and is influenced by discourse. Here's how to conduct a power relations analysis using Foucauldian concepts and methodologies. 1. Tools for power relations analysis. Theoretical framework. Power, knowledge concept. Use Foucault's concept of power, knowledge to understand how knowledge both creates and is created by power structures. Disciplinary power and biopower. Employ these concepts to examine how power operates through social and institutional practices that regulate human behavior and manage populations. Discourse analysis. Textual and linguistic analysis. Analyze texts for language that signifies power dynamics, such as how subjects are positioned, who speaks, and what can be spoken. Contextual discourse analysis. Examine how discourses function within specific institutional or social contexts, identifying the roles they play in reinforcing or challenging power structures. Genealogical and archaeological methods. Genealogy. Trace the history and development of discourses to understand how current forms of power have evolved. Archaeology. Analyze the layers of historical discourses to reveal the rules and conditions that have shaped the emergence of knowledge and power relations. Ethnographic approaches. Observational studies. Conduct observations in settings where power relations are clearly manifested through discursive practices, such as in courts, schools, or hospitals. Interviews and fieldwork. Gather first-hand accounts of how individuals experience and understand power relations within their specific contexts. 2. Methodological steps for analyzing power relations. Data collection. Gather relevant texts and artifacts. Collect documents, media content, speeches, policy papers, and other relevant texts that reflect the discourses you intend to analyze. Documentation of institutional practices. Note practices within institutions that reveal how power operates through regulations, norms, and routines. Analytical process. Identify discursive practices. Focus on how discourses construct social realities, influence behaviors, and establish authority. Map power dynamics. Identify who holds power within discourses, who is marginalized, and how these positions are justified and maintained. Interpretation and synthesis. Apply Foucauldian concepts. Use Foucault's theories to interpret the findings, linking the micro-level interactions to broader power mechanisms. Critically assess implications. Consider the implications of power relations for individuals and groups within the society, particularly in terms of social justice and equality. Reporting and dissemination. Comprehensive documentation. Ensure that all findings and analyses are thoroughly documented, with clear connections drawn between the data and theoretical frameworks. Engagement with broader discourses. Share findings with the academic community and, where appropriate, beyond, to engage with and possibly influence broader discourses and practices. Conducting a power relations analysis using Foucauldian methodologies provides deep insights into the complex and often hidden mechanisms by which power is exercised and resisted in society. By focusing on how power shapes and is shaped by discourse, researchers can uncover new layers of understanding about social structures, influencing both theoretical and practical approaches to dealing with power inequalities. This methodological approach not only deepens our understanding of societal dynamics but also empowers us to question and potentially transform the dominant power relations that shape our world. 4. Genealogy. The genealogical method, heavily influenced by Friedrich Nietzsche and further developed by Michel Foucault, serves as a powerful analytical tool in Foucauldian discourse analysis. Genealogy focuses on the origin and evolution of concepts, discourses, and the institutions that propagate them, aiming to reveal and critique the power relationships embedded within what is often accepted as natural or inevitable knowledge. This method is especially potent for exposing how certain truths and norms have been constructed and the roles they play in maintaining specific power structures. Here's a detailed approach on how to conduct a genealogical analysis using Foucauldian concepts. 1. Tools for conducting genealogical analysis. Historical critique. Tracing origins. Examine the historical context in which certain discourses and knowledge forms emerged. This involves going back to the initial conditions of their inception, not to discover a pure origin, but to uncover the series of often contingent events that led to their establishment as truths. Descent and emergence. Analyze the descent, the development and transformation of discourses over time, and emergence, the conditions and conflicts that gave rise to new discourses or knowledge forms. Deconstruction of ideologies. Critical examination. Challenge the taken-for-granted status of current knowledge and ideologies by showing their historical roots and the power dynamics they serve. Expose hidden interests. Reveal the political, economic, or social interests that discourses have historically served, and how they contribute to maintaining certain power relations. Discursive and non-discursive practices. Institutional analysis. Investigate how institutions like the prison, the clinic, or the school have played a role in forming and cementing certain discourses. Role of practices. Consider both discursive practices, ways of speaking and arguing, and non-discursive practices, actions, processes, and institutional procedures, in the perpetuation of discourses. 2. Methodological steps for genealogical analysis. Data collection. Gathering historical data. Collect historical texts, records, and artifacts that provide insights into the evolution of specific discourses. Document discontinuities and shifts. Focus on periods of change where new knowledge forms displaced older ones or where significant shifts in power structures occurred. Analysis. Identify key moments and figures. Focus on critical turning points in the history of a discourse and the key figures who played pivotal roles in these transformations. Analyze conflicts and strategies. Examine the conflicts, debates, and strategic maneuvers through which certain discourses gained prominence or were marginalized. Interpretation. Contextualize findings. Place the evolution of discourses within the broader social, political, and economic contexts. Link to present. Connect historical findings to contemporary issues, showing how past power dynamics continue to influence present conditions. Reporting. Critical narratives. Construct narratives that not only report historical findings but also critically assess the implications of these histories for current understandings and practices. Engage with current discourses. Use the genealogical findings to engage with and challenge current discourses, particularly those that appear natural or unassailable. Genealogy, as a methodological approach, provides a critical tool for understanding how certain practices and forms of knowledge come to be seen as truthful, and how they function within power structures. By exposing the historical roots and contingent nature of discourses, genealogy challenges their inevitability and opens up spaces for alternative narratives and forms of knowledge that might better serve contemporary needs for justice and equality. This approach is crucial for those who seek not just to understand the world as it is, but to challenge and change it. 5. Archaeology of knowledge. The archaeology of knowledge, a methodological framework developed by Michel Foucault, provides a unique approach for analyzing the historical rules, transformations, and discursive practices that have shaped the formation of specific bodies of knowledge. Unlike traditional historical inquiry that seeks to trace the development of ideas to understand the present, archaeology focuses on the rules and conditions that underlie the formation of knowledge systems in different historical epochs. This tool is instrumental for uncovering the deep structures of knowledge and understanding how certain truths and discourses came to be established. 1. Tools for conducting archaeological analysis. Structural analysis of discourse. Identification of discursive formations. Focus on the conditions under which discourses are formed, identifying patterns, rules, and conventions that govern what can be said within specific knowledge domains. Analysis of epistemic rules. Examine the underlying rules that dictate the creation, transformation, and continuity of knowledge. These rules can include the logic, reasoning, and methodologies accepted within different disciplines or epistemes. Mapping of relations. Interdiscursive analysis. Explore how different discourses interact, overlap, and influence each other, shaping broader knowledge structures. Role of institutions. Analyze the influence of educational, scientific, political, and other institutional bodies in shaping and sustaining discourses. Examination of discursive practices. Practical enactment of discourses. Study how discourses are manifested in practices, rituals, and behaviors within societies. Materiality of discourse. Consider the material aspects that support discourses, such as technologies, architectures, and physical spaces where discourses are produced and reproduced. 2. Methodological steps for archaeological analysis. Data collection. Comprehensive documentation. Gather a wide array of documents, texts, and artifacts from the period under study. This should include both primary and secondary sources to get a thorough understanding of the prevailing discourses. Contextual gathering. Collect data not just on the content of discourses but also on the contexts in which they emerge and exist. Analytical framework. Discontinuity focus. Pay attention to breaks, gaps, and shifts in knowledge rather than continuity and progression. This involves identifying the moments when significant changes in discourse occurred. Rule extraction. Deduce the rules that governed discursive practices by analyzing how knowledge was organized, what was deemed acceptable, and how transitions in thought were managed. Synthesis and interpretation. Reconstruct discursive frameworks. Reconstruct the frameworks within which knowledge was organized in different periods without imposing contemporary understandings or linear historical developments. Neutral description. Strive for a neutral, objective description of discursive formations, avoiding interpretations influenced by present-day values or assumptions. Reporting and dissemination. Detailed reporting. Produce detailed accounts of the discursive formations and the rules extracted during the analysis. Ensure that the reporting illuminates the structures of knowledge rather than just the content. Theoretical engagement. Engage with existing theoretical frameworks and contribute new insights that may challenge or refine current understandings of how knowledge is structured. Foucault's archaeology of knowledge provides a profound methodological approach for exploring the subtle, often invisible rules that govern the production of knowledge. By focusing on these structures rather than on the content or contributions of individual thinkers, archaeology offers a way to understand the conditions of possibility for different types of knowledge in various historical periods. This approach not only enhances our understanding of historical epistemes but also encourages a critical reflection on the ways our current knowledge practices are shaped and constrained. 6. Biopolitics. Biopolitics, a term coined by Michel Foucault, refers to the strategies and mechanisms through which human biological processes are managed by governments in an attempt to regulate populations. This concept is closely related to Foucault's notion of biopower, which involves the exertion of power over populations to control aspects of human life like birth, health, mortality, and body. Biopolitics as a tool for Foucauldian analysis allows researchers to explore how modern states utilize various practices and technologies of power to influence the health and behaviors of their citizens. Here are some methodologies and tools to effectively conduct an analysis focusing on biopolitics. 1. Tools for analyzing biopolitics. Document and policy analysis. Study government policies. Examine public health policies, sanitation, urban planning, and welfare policies to understand how governments seek to manage life processes. Analyze legal texts. Review laws and regulations that pertain to health, safety, and the environment to discern how these legal frameworks contribute to the management of populations. Case studies. Health systems analysis. Investigate specific instances, such as national healthcare reforms or responses to public health crises, to see how biopolitical power is exercised. Historical events. Study historical instances of public health emergencies, such as pandemics or environmental disasters, to analyze how these events have shaped biopolitical strategies. Statistical and demographic analysis. Population data. Use demographic research to examine how data on birth rates, mortality rates, disease incidence, etc., are used by states to make decisions that affect population management. Risk assessment studies. Look at how concepts of risk are constructed and used to justify certain biopolitical interventions. Ethnographic methods. Field observations. Conduct observations in sites like hospitals, schools, or public health institutions to see how biopolitical power is manifested in everyday practices. Interviews. Gather qualitative data from healthcare professionals, policymakers, and citizens to understand their perspectives on government health interventions. 2. Methodological steps for conducting biopolitical analysis. Data collection. Gather relevant materials. Compile a wide range of materials including governmental reports, health records, media articles, and academic studies related to biopolitical themes. Document ethical considerations. Given the sensitive nature of health-related data, ensure ethical guidelines are followed, particularly concerning privacy and consent. Analytical process. Identify themes of control. Focus on identifying how narratives around health and safety are used to justify the control over the life and bodies of citizens. Map out intervention strategies. Describe and analyze the strategies used by the state to intervene in the biological processes of its population. Interpretation. Apply Foucauldian theories. Use Foucault's concepts of biopower and governmentality to frame and interpret the findings, connecting the data to broader theoretical discussions on power and governance. Critically assess implications. Consider the social, ethical, and political implications of biopolitical practices, especially in terms of autonomy, freedom, and privacy. Reporting and dissemination. Comprehensive documentation. Ensure findings are well documented and contextualized within Foucauldian theoretical frameworks. Engage with broader discourses. Share insights with the academic community and, where relevant, engage in public discourse to inform or critique current biopolitical practices. Biopolitics provides a crucial lens for understanding the complex ways in which modern states regulate and control the life processes of their populations. By employing a Foucauldian approach to analyze these practices, researchers can uncover the subtle and overt mechanisms of power that influence public health, hygiene, and risk management. This analysis not only enhances our understanding of state power and human biology but also encourages a critical reflection on the ethical dimensions of such governance practices. 7. Governmentality. Governmentality, as developed by Michel Foucault, is a concept that broadens the understanding of governance beyond conventional notions of government. It refers to the various means and strategies through which societies are rendered governable, encompassing an array of institutions, procedures, analyses, and reflections that collectively facilitate a specific, albeit complex, form of power, the art of governing. This Foucauldian analysis tool is crucial for understanding the intricate ways in which power is exercised not just through coercion or consent but through the shaping of conduct in more capillary and pervasive ways. 1. Tools for analyzing governmentality. Institutional analysis. Study of institutions. Examine institutions like schools, prisons, hospitals, and government agencies to see how they contribute to governing the conduct of individuals and populations. Regulatory frameworks. Analyze the policies and regulations that guide these institutions, focusing on how they standardize behaviors and practices. Discourse analysis. Policy documents and public statements. Analyze texts that outline governance strategies, such as government reports, policy briefs, and public speeches. Media analysis. Study how media contributes to the discourse on governance and shapes public perception and behavior. Technologies of government. Mechanisms and techniques. Investigate the specific techniques and mechanisms used to govern populations, including surveillance, assessments, and statistical measures. Data collection and analysis. Look at how data is used to monitor, categorize, and manage populations. Ethnographic studies. Fieldwork. Conduct observations and interviews in settings affected by governmental policies to understand how governmentality is experienced and resisted by individuals. Case studies. Utilize case studies to examine particular instances of governmental intervention and their effects on specific groups or communities. 2. Methodological steps for conducting governmentality analysis. Data collection. Gather a broad range of materials. Compile governmental and institutional documents, media outputs, academic articles, and first-hand accounts that shed light on the strategies and effects of governance. Multidisciplinary sources. Utilize sources from political science, sociology, psychology, and history to provide a comprehensive view of the mechanisms of governmentality. Analytical process. Identifying governmental rationalities. Decode the reasoning and logic behind governance strategies to understand their objectives and justification. Mapping techniques of governance. Outline how various governance techniques are applied within and across different institutions. Interpretation. Apply Foucauldian theories. Frame the findings within Foucault's theoretical constructs of power, governmentality, and subject formation. Contextual and comparative analysis. Place the mechanisms of governmentality within broader social, economic, and political contexts to assess their impacts and implications. Reporting and dissemination. Critical engagement. Produce reports that not only present data but also critically engage with the implications of governmentality on freedom, ethics, and society. Academic and public discourse. Share findings in academic journals and public forums to stimulate discussion on governance practices and their broader societal effects. Analyzing governmentality with Foucauldian tools allows for a deep understanding of how modern societies are governed through complex arrays of practices that extend far beyond the mere exercise of political power. This analysis helps uncover the often subtle and dispersed techniques of governance that shape individual and collective behaviors, providing critical insights into the ways our societies function and are controlled. Through this lens, researchers can critically assess the efficacy and ethics of governance practices and their profound impact on shaping human conduct. 8. Technologies of the self. Technologies of the self is a concept introduced by Michel Foucault that focuses on the various methods and techniques through which individuals are encouraged to monitor, transform, and regulate their own behaviors, thoughts, and feelings in alignment with societal norms and expectations. This concept is central to understanding how power operates not just externally through institutions and social structures, but internally, through the ways individuals govern themselves. Analyzing technologies of the self involves looking at the interplay between power, knowledge, and subjectivity and how these elements contribute to self-formation and identity. Here are some methodologies and tools to conduct an analysis of technologies of the self using a Foucauldian lens. 1. Tools for analyzing technologies of the self. Historical and cultural analysis. Historical context. Study historical texts and practices to understand how different technologies of the self have evolved over time. Cultural practices. Examine cultural rituals, educational practices, and social norms that guide how individuals should perceive and regulate themselves. Discourse analysis. Self-help and medical literature. Analyze texts that provide norms and guidelines on self-improvement, mental health, and physical health. Media representations. Study how media portrays ideal behaviors and lifestyles, influencing individual self-perceptions and actions. Ethnographic methods. Participant observation. Engage in settings where technologies of the self are prominent, such as wellness centers, therapy sessions, or educational institutions. Interviews. Conduct interviews to understand how individuals internalize and practice self-regulation and self-improvement. Psychological and sociological approaches. Surveys and questionnaires. Utilize these tools to gather data on personal habits, health routines, and mental health practices. Behavioral studies. Observe and analyze behaviors in controlled environments to see how societal norms influence individual actions. 2. Methodological steps for conducting analysis. Data collection. Gather diverse sources. Collect a range of materials including books, films, advertising, social media content, and personal narratives that reflect the ways in which individuals are taught and encouraged to govern themselves. Document actual practices. Note real-life practices and rituals that people engage in to align with societal expectations. Analytical process. Identify key themes. Look for recurring themes such as health, morality, success, and happiness in the data and how they are presented as objectives for self-improvement. Map techniques and strategies. Outline specific methods advocated for self-regulation and improvement, such as meditation, fitness routines, dieting, or continuous learning. Interpretation. Apply Foucauldian theories. Use Foucault's concepts of power, discourse, and subjectivity to interpret how these technologies act as forms of self-governance. Assess implications. Consider the implications for autonomy, identity, and resistance. Analyze how these technologies might empower but also constrain individuals. Reporting and dissemination. Synthesize findings. Develop comprehensive analyses that synthesize historical, cultural, psychological, and sociological insights into how individuals are shaped by societal norms. Engage broader discussions. Share findings in academic journals, conferences, or public seminars to contribute to broader discussions on self-governance and personal freedom. Analyzing technologies of the self with a Foucauldian approach provides a nuanced view of the subtle and often invisible ways in which power permeates personal life. This analysis helps uncover how individuals are not only subjects to external power structures but also active participants in their own self-formation. By understanding these mechanisms, researchers can offer insights into the dynamics of self-regulation, the pressures of conformity, and the potential for autonomy and resistance within modern societies. 9. Subjectification. Subjectification, or the process of becoming a subject, is a central theme in Michel Foucault's exploration of power relations and discourse analysis. Foucault argues that power and knowledge interact to shape individuals into subjects, not just in the sense of becoming aware and conscious entities, but in terms of how they are defined, controlled, and recognized within specific cultural and social frameworks. This process of subjectification involves various mechanisms through which individuals come to recognize themselves and are recognized by others as subjects of particular types. 1. Tools for analyzing subjectification. Discourse analysis. Examine identity discourses. Analyze the discourses that define what it means to be a particular kind of subject, e.g., a criminal, a patient, a citizen. Language and power. Study how language is used in these discourses to shape identities and subjectivities. Institutional analysis. Role of institutions. Look at how institutions like schools, prisons, hospitals, and military organizations play a role in the process of subjectification by imposing identities and roles on individuals. Regulatory frameworks. Investigate how laws, policies, and administrative measures contribute to defining subjects and their behaviors. Historical methodology. Genealogy of the subject. Trace the historical development of concepts related to subjectivity, such as madness, delinquency, or sexuality. Archaeology of knowledge. Examine the historical conditions under which certain types of subjects have been produced. Psychological and ethnographic approaches. Self-narratives and life histories. Collect and analyze personal narratives, autobiographies, and interviews to understand how individuals internalize and resist subject positions. Observational studies. Conduct ethnographic research to observe how subjectification occurs in everyday interactions and practices. 2. Methodological steps for conducting subjectification analysis. Data collection. Diverse source materials. Gather texts, institutional records, media, personal narratives, and observational data that reflect the ways subjects are formed and reformed in different contexts. Contextual and comparative data. Collect data from different time periods and cultural settings to see how the processes of subjectification vary and change. Analytical framework. Identifying mechanisms of subjectification. Determine the specific mechanisms by which subjects are shaped, through norms, discourses, practices, and institutions. Mapping power relations. Analyze how power flows through these mechanisms and impacts the formation of subjects. Interpretation. Theoretical application. Use Foucauldian theories of power, knowledge, and discourse to frame and interpret findings. Critically assess subject roles. Consider how these roles serve broader power structures and the potential for resistance and transformation by subjects. Reporting and dissemination. Synthesize and report findings. Produce detailed analyses that connect empirical findings with theoretical insights. Engage broader discourses. Present findings in academic, professional, and public arenas to engage with and influence broader discussions on subjectivity and power. The analysis of subjectification offers profound insights into the complex interactions between power, knowledge, and identity. By exploring how subjects are formed through these interactions, Foucauldian analysis provides a critical perspective on the often taken for granted processes that shape individual identities and social roles. This approach not only deepens our understanding of social and cultural dynamics but also opens up possibilities for questioning and transforming the ways individuals are defined and govern themselves. Conclusion. The array of tools for conducting Foucauldian analysis provides a comprehensive framework for understanding the complex dynamics of power, knowledge, and subjectivity in society. By applying methods such as identifying epistemes, examining discursive practices, and analyzing power relations, researchers can unravel the conditions under which societal truths and norms are constructed. The genealogical and archaeological approaches allow for a historical perspective on these constructions, challenging the perceived neutrality of knowledge and revealing the power structures that underlie it. Furthermore, the study of biopolitics, governmentality, technologies of the self, and subjectification opens up avenues for analyzing how states govern populations and how individuals conform to or resist societal expectations. These tools are crucial not only for academic inquiry but also for fostering a critical awareness of the mechanisms through which societies and individuals are shaped and governed. Frequently asked questions. What does identifying epistemes involve in Foucauldian analysis? Identifying epistemes involves understanding the underlying conditions of truth that characterize different historical periods. An episteme is the set of linked relationships that allow certain types of knowledge and discourse to appear as legitimate or true in any given era. Analyzing epistemes helps uncover the foundational frameworks that shape and constrain knowledge production. How are discursive practices examined in Foucauldian analysis? Examining discursive practices involves analyzing how discourses are produced, the rules governing them, and the roles they play in society. This includes studying the language used, the formal and informal regulations that dictate discourse, and how these discourses serve to sustain or challenge power structures within specific contexts. What is involved in analyzing power relations in Foucauldian discourse analysis? Power relations analysis investigates how relationships of power are constructed and exercised through discourse. It examines how certain discourses empower specific groups or ideas while marginalizing others, and how these power dynamics are maintained through language, institutions, and social practices. How is genealogy used as a tool in Foucauldian analysis? Genealogy is used to conduct historical analysis that seeks to expose and undermine the power relationships embedded in accepted knowledge and discourses. This method involves tracing the origin and evolution of concepts to understand how certain truths became established and to reveal the power struggles that have shaped their trajectory over time. What does the archaeology of knowledge analyze? The archaeology of knowledge analyzes the historical rules, transformations, and discursive practices that have led to the formation of particular bodies of knowledge. This approach focuses on the structural aspects of discourses across different periods without attributing changes to individual agency or overarching social transformations. How is biopolitics studied in Foucauldian analysis? Biopolitics is studied by examining how modern states regulate their citizens through practices of public health, hygiene, risk management, and other regulatory measures aimed at managing life processes. This tool focuses on the ways in which the biological lives of citizens become the objects of political strategies. What does governmentality explore in Foucauldian discourse analysis? Governmentality explores how a wide range of institutions, procedures, analyses, and reflections contribute to a complex form of power aimed at governing. This tool examines how these various elements form a coherent strategy to shape, guide, and influence the behavior of populations and individuals. What are technologies of the self, and how are they analyzed? Technologies of the self are methods through which individuals are encouraged to understand and modify their behavior, thoughts, and feelings to align with societal norms. Foucauldian analysis of these technologies examines how individuals internalize and enact the discourses that encourage self-regulation and alignment with broader social expectations. How is subjectification studied in Foucauldian discourse analysis? Subjectification is studied by understanding how individuals become subjects through various types of power and knowledge. This involves examining how individuals are classified, divided, and made into subjects of particular types of knowledge and power through discourses such as medicine, law, education, and more.